Hey, good evening, everybody. It's Wednesday night Bible class. You were probably expecting to see Dave Vaughn here tonight teaching the book of Acts, but Dave is going to be out of town for a couple of weeks. So we're going to have a special treat tonight. We have a guest here, Wayne Tomlinson, who's going to talk to us about his personal helping ministry. You may have seen the video that we ran on Sunday announcing that he would be doing that. It's extremely interesting. I'm going to spend a few minutes introducing the general topic, and then he'll come up here and we'll do some discussing. I do want to mention that if you are interested in hearing Dave Vaughn teach the book of Acts, let me put it this way. If you're not interested in Dave Vaughn teaching the book of Acts, you need to rethink that position. And he will be back in a couple of weeks, and he'll be giving us insights that are things you hadn't thought about before in the book of Acts. So I hope you will try and be here, and please be patient while we spend a couple of weeks waiting for his return. Also at the building on Wednesday nights, Mark Villiger is teaching The Chosen TV program. And in that class, they are running through half of an episode each week and discussing it. So it's highly interactive. It's going to be a lot of fun. I've talked to people who were in there last week. It is a lot of fun, and you'll get a lot of great insights. So, you should be here for one of those classes. But those of you who are at home, thank you for tuning in tonight. And the other thing I want to mention is that on Sunday nights at the building at 6 p.m., Howard Johnson leads a 242 life group with singing and a Bible message. And if you didn't get to take the Lord's Supper, you can do that on Sunday night. So that's a great opportunity to get together in a small group. So before we talk with Wayne, his ministry is called Neighbors Helping Neighbors. And I want to talk a little bit about exactly that subject, and perhaps more specifically, some scriptures related to helping the poor. There's really no shortage of scriptures that relate to this topic. I just want to share a few of them to set the tone. In the book of Proverbs, chapter 19 and verse 17, it says, "Whoever is kind to the poor lends to the Lord," lends to the Lord, "and he will reward them for what they have done." In Deuteronomy chapter 15 and verse 7, it says, "If anyone is poor among your fellow Israelites in any of the towns of the land the Lord your God is giving you, do not be hard-hearted or tight-fisted toward them." And in that same chapter, verse 11, it says, "There will always be poor people in the land." Jesus said that, didn't he? "Therefore, I command you to be open-handed toward your fellow Israelites who are poor and needy in your land." Psalm 37, verse 21, "The wicked borrow and do not repay, but the righteous give generously." Proverbs 28, verse 27, "Those who give to the poor will lack nothing, but those who close their eyes to them receive many curses." Proverbs, the book of wisdom. Proverbs chapter 31, verses 8 and 9. "Speak up for those who cannot speak for themselves, for the rights of all who are destitute. Speak up and judge fairly. Defend the rights of the poor and needy." And in Isaiah chapter 58, verses 6 to 8, It says, "Is not this the kind of fasting I have chosen? to loose the chains of injustice and untie the cords of the yoke, to set the oppressed free and break every yoke? Is it not to share your food with the hungry and to provide the poor wanderer with shelter? When you see the naked, to clothe them and not to turn away from your own flesh and blood? Then your light will break forth like the dawn, and your healing will quickly appear. Then your righteousness will go before you, and the glory of the Lord will be your rear guard. Well, it's a good thing to help the poor, isn't it? Absolutely. I've been the elder in charge of benevolence for longer than I can remember now. And it has been a spiritual journey for me because, of course, you want to help everybody that asks. And you want to be responsible with the resources that have been given to the church. People work hard for what they contribute to the church. But the role of benevolence is when we have someone who has fallen on bad times or been the victim of some catastrophe or whatever, and they have a need, they come to us and we have to consider. But, you know, we have a benevolence budget every year. And it is not the biggest part of the budget by any stretch of the imagination. For this church to function, we pretty much depend on keeping this building going, and we depend on having staff to preach and teach and organize. Of course, we have many volunteers, but our budget has those, building and staff requirements that have to be taken care of. And then there are educational materials, and there are, college and young people events and programs, and there are all kinds of things. But is it entirely the church's responsibility to care for people in need around us? It really isn't, is it? Not even close. We're going to take a look at the parable of the Good Samaritan in a minute here, and I'm going to talk for just a few more minutes, and then I'm going to get Wayne up here to talk to us about his ministry. But I want to talk about the parable of the Good Samaritan a little bit. And then I also want to continue that discussion next week because Dave is going to be away next week as well. So I appreciate your being here, and I think you're going to enjoy this. I want to start with a little background on the parable of the Good Samaritan. Somebody asked the question, why does John 4:9 say the Jews had no dealings with the Samaritans? Now, John 4, of course, is the woman at the well, the Samaritan woman at the well. And a fellow named Dr. Tom Lavorne gave this answer to the question, why Jews had no dealings with the Samaritans. And I just think it's interesting historical background, so we understand kind of the tension that was there. The Jews had an ongoing feud with the Samaritans from the time they returned from Babylonian captivity. Now think of that, coming back from Babylon, and there's tension, there's feud with the Samaritans. That's a long time ago. Bible students call this the Samaritan Schism. When King Nebuchadnezzar of Babylon was conquering most of the Middle Eastern world, he used a tactic designed to keep his captives from uniting and rebelling. This is King Nebuchadnezzar. And the tactic he used is kind of like fruit basket turnover, which is mix everything up, right? So they can't unite and rebel. So he moved large populations of countries to different locations. So when he took most of Judah to Babylon, he resettled other people in their place. He took Judah away from Babylon and resettled other people in Judah. But not all the Jews were carried off to Babylon, right? There's still some Jews in Judea. And the elderly and sickly were left there. And many temple scribes were left to care for them. With the country almost vacant, the scribes and other able-bodied people moved into the plantations on the rolling pasture lands of Samaria. These, the scribes and other able-bodied, intermarried with those who were brought in by Nebuchadnezzar, so that the Samaritans were no longer a pure Jewish race. So Nebuchadnezzar brought outsiders in, these Jews intermarried, they were no longer a pure Jewish race. The Jews called them half-breeds, and, they intermarried, and 70 years later, after the return from Babylon, the Samaritans came to help rebuild Jerusalem. They came to Jerusalem and said, we want to help rebuild. But the Jews called them half-breeds and sent them home. The Samaritans built their own temple, which the Jews considered pagan. The feud grew, and by the time of Christ, the Jews hated the Samaritans so much they crossed the Jordan River rather than travel through Samaria. But John 4:4 says Jesus had to go through Samaria. Why? Because he had a divine appointment there with a woman who later said she believed when the Messiah came, he would teach her about God. Okay, so we have that little bit of background. Now let's go to Luke chapter 10. We're going to take a look at the parable of the Good Samaritan. Luke chapter 10, verses 25 to 37. On one occasion, an expert in the law stood up to test Jesus. An expert in the law, testing Jesus. Teacher, he asked, what must I do to inherit eternal life? A very important religious question. What is written in the law? He replied. How do you read it? What does the law say? Jesus said. He answered, this is the teacher of the law. He answered, love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your strength and with all your mind, and love your neighbor as yourself. You have answered correctly, Jesus replied. Do this and you will live. But he wanted to justify himself, so he asked Jesus, and who is my neighbor? In reply, Jesus said, a man was going down from Jerusalem to Jericho when he was attacked by robbers. They stripped him of his clothes, beat him, and went away, leaving him half dead. A priest happened to be going down the same road, and when he saw the man, he passed by on the other side. So too, a Levite, when he came to the place and saw him, passed by on the other side. But a Samaritan, as he traveled, came where the man was, and when he saw him, he took pity on him. He went to him and bandaged his wounds, pouring on oil and wine. Then he put the man on his own donkey, brought him to an inn, and took care of him. The next day he took out 2 denarii and gave them to the innkeeper. Look after him, he said, and when I return, I will reimburse you for any extra expense you may have. Which of these 3 do you think was a neighbor to the man who fell into the hands of robbers? The expert in the law replied, the one who had mercy on him. Jesus told him, "Go and do likewise." The one who had mercy on the robber was a Samaritan, which probably was, I don't know, infuriating to the teacher of the law. He couldn't have been pleased about the way Jesus told that story. But I want to talk more about that next week, but I want to introduce Wayne to you now. And what I want to say is that he did something that was a lot like the Good Samaritan, I think. He took initiative. He said, "This ought to be done, and I'm willing to take some risk to try to make it happen." And so he's going to tell us about his personal ministry. And in a second, Matt's going to play the video that you may have seen on Sunday that tells a little bit about Wayne. Not much. We're going to find out a lot more in a minute. But I have to say this: we're not listening to Wayne tonight because we're going to start a church ministry just like his. That's not the purpose. Wayne is going to share his personal ministry with us. It's inspiring, it's innovative, it's bold, and in a sense, it was all him. It wasn't his church doing it. He did it. And in that sense, he was like the Good Samaritan as well, who simply took on the man who was robbed and took care of him. That's what Wayne did. So as you look at it, you might be the kind of person who can do the same sort of thing that Wayne did, and you might not. But let's be inspired by somebody who did the hard work of taking care of somebody who was in need. In fact, not just somebody, but a bunch of somebodies. And he got the community to help. I don't want to take his thunder away too much. Okay, Matt, would you roll that video for us?
A North Texas man has spent the last 2 years of the pandemic giving back in a big way. He is using the power of social media to fuel an online effort of neighbors helping neighbors.
The pandemic started, and we had thousands of our neighbors, everybody had thousands of our neighbors that lost their jobs. And through that, I realized that a lot of people are in need of some serious financial help. And as an individual, I recognize that I don't have the means to do the things that people needed to help pull them through the pandemic. So what I did, I used an app that you can get on your phone or on your laptop or on your computer. It's called Nextdoor. Many of you may already have Nextdoor on your phone.
What it does, it connects you with people in your neighborhood that are also on the app.
Wayne Tomlinson of Corinth and generous neighbors have helped people find jobs, food, clothing, and avoid eviction.
We've helped 52 families, but we've had over 400 people donate in one way or another.
If they come onto Nextdoor and they say they're needing some help, they probably really need some help. And I've called it Neighbors Helping Neighbors. Working toward that goal of helping your neighbors through difficult situations. A lot of people thank me for what I've done, but I'll tell you, and I tell them all the time, it wasn't me. I started the whole thing out by saying that I don't have the means to do that. But as a community, as a neighborhood, if your outreach in your neighborhood on next door is 15 or 20,000 people, just think what great things 20,000 people could do to help somebody like that.
All right, Wayne, come on up in the flesh here. You've got I guess they're going to turn your sound on.
Yeah, he's going to turn me on.
Wayne, welcome.
Thank
You're
you.
from Texas, I believe.
I am from Texas. I lived about 35 miles north of downtown Dallas, right on 35. And so, yeah, I'm from Texas.
And but you're not exactly from Texas now.
I'm not from Texas anymore. I'm a full-time RVer now. My wife and I sold our house in Texas on February the 3rd. We bought our RV on February the 8th, and we came here. So I've been here in this area since February the 8th, and I'm leaving next Thursday. But while I was here, it was an unusual circumstance, wasn't it, when we met?
Well, it was. It was at one of the guest lunches after services.
Yeah.
And you came up to me and started talking to me.
Yeah, after lunch, I saw George sitting over on the pew by himself, or on a chair by himself, over up against the wall. And so, in just listening to George during the day, during the lunch, I figured, I think George is an elder. So I sat beside George, and I asked him, I said, "Are you an elder here?" And he said, "Yes." And I said, "Well, I'd like to maybe speak to the elder in charge of benevolence." He said, "That's me." So it's just kind of strange how it came together that I didn't have to waste any time hunting and finding
That's
the
right.
person.
It was
You were
very
sitting
efficient.
right there.
Yeah. Yes, indeed. Would you like to? No, let's not go there right now. We'll go there later.
Okay.
Hey, so talk to us about this program and
Okay, I want to tell you all that this all started because in 2012, I lost my job, and I was out of work for 13 months over a 2-year period. During that time, almost lost my house, almost lost my vehicles. You can easily see how it doesn't take long to quickly lose everything you own, everything. And when the pandemic started, there were a lot of people like that. But when I was in that situation in 2012, it was really disappointing but eye-opening to me, because while I was not a member of a specific congregation in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, I knew probably half the people in that congregation through my childhood. I'd known some of those people for 40 years. And a couple of the people I had real close friendships with, I thought, were elders at that congregation. So when I found myself to the point I was taking part-time jobs, doing odd jobs, doing everything I could to earn some money to help keep my house and everything. It got to where I was going to have to do something. Just like I said in the video, when people come publicly asking for help, they probably really need help. And I was in that situation. I went to that church. I called one of the elders, and I told him my situation. And I said, "I have got to have some help, or I'm going to lose everything I own pretty quick." He said, "Well, let me take it to the eldership, and I'll let you know." He called me back, and he said, "Since you're not a member at our church, there's nothing we can do." Now, can you believe he would tell me that? He'd known me for 40 years. And he says, "Since you're not a member of our church, we can't help you." And I thought, well, you know me. And you know 100 other people in that congregation that know me. Maybe you could make a personal effort just to go around to them and ask them to help me. But none of that was done. And to me, that really hurt me. I mean, it hurt me. But what George said earlier is, a lot of and what that illuminates the idea that George talked about earlier. There are a lot of people in need that are truly in need, but they can't help all of those people out of the church budget. Now, one thing I don't mean to put George in the spot, but he said he said the church can't help those people, a lot of those people. What he meant was the church budget is not able to handle all of the need. But the church is not, the church is not that budget. The church is not limited by that budget. You know good and well, if you see a need, you don't have to go to George and say, hey, can the church help this person? You can help that person. It's an individual thing. It always has been an individual thing. Usually when Jesus spoke to people like he was speaking to that teacher of the law, he was talking to him one-on-one. And his lesson was meant for that person. That person said, who's my neighbor? Who's my neighbor? He didn't say, who's our neighbor? He said, who's my neighbor? And Jesus told him the story. Jesus was talking to him personally. And he said, you go and do likewise. So it's an individual responsibility to help each other and to be a good neighbor. And so when the pandemic hit, and I saw so many people out of work. I mean, in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, we're talking hundreds of thousands of people. In my area, in Denton County, where there's 1 million people, 100,000 people were out of work. And like the video said, I knew that I couldn't help people get out of that situation. But I had the app on my phone already. It's called Nextdoor. You can look it up. It's right here. It's a little dot, the app icon right there. And I monitor it every day. So when I came here, well, I'll start with there. I went on to Nextdoor, and usually people go on Nextdoor complaining about the HOA or complaining about dogs running wild in the neighborhood or complaining about their neighbor's loud music, and I'm going to call the sheriff on my neighbor. Well, I always say, have you ever thought about going next door and just knocking on the door and talking to your neighbor? So I went on the Nextdoor and I said, you know, a lot of people come on here to just complain about everything. Just complain about this, complain about that. But you know, while you're complaining about such trivial things as a dog running wild in the neighborhood, there's probably somebody living on your block that doesn't know where their next paycheck's coming from. They can't make their house payment, they're having trouble feeding their family, and you're complaining about a dog running loose in your neighborhood? Have you even talked to your neighbor to see if you can help them? So I told everybody on Nextdoor, I said, look, if you know somebody in a bad straits right now because of the pandemic, I said, let me know, and we'll see if as a neighborhood, we can all pitch in and help somebody. And in 2 days, I got a message from a lady, a private message from a lady on Nextdoor that said the young lady that does her nails, that usually did her nails, lost her job because the salon she worked at was closed down. She had no income for 6 weeks. She was a single mom, had 2 little kids, and she said, I've contacted the lady, but she can't even do my nails at home or she loses her license. So she's really struggling. Do you think the neighborhood might be able to pitch in and help her? I said, well, all I can do is ask and we'll see. So I put that story on Nextdoor, and within 2 days, my entry hall was full of food. We had a couple of $100 worth of gift cards for food. We had like, I don't know, it was over $1,000 in donations, just in cash donations. And I called the lady up. I said, you got to come get this food and take it over to these people, this lady, and I've got a bunch of other stuff for you. So she came over. I gave her the several $100s worth of food for the kids, for her and her kids. I gave them all the money we had collected in donations, gave them the gift cards, and she went over there and went and took care of that young lady and her family. And it was all just through donations from the neighborhood. I put the challenge out there on Nextdoor, And the neighborhood responded. And so I went on the next door the next day and I said, look, here's what happened. You guys responded in a great way. Let's see if we can do it again. If anybody else knows somebody, let me know. And over the course of 20 months before I left in February, the community had pitched in and helped 52 families. We had helped people from just paying an electric bill because they had other issues, medical issues or whatever, and it really, one couple, the lady was a nurse, a registered nurse, but for some reason hospitals laid off some nurses, and she got laid off. They were a 2-income family, suddenly became a 1-income family, and they were struggling. And so I went to the neighborhood, we paid their electric bill. Their electric bill was $671. She came and she asked me, she said, I just need some help. If you can get that help together for me, that would be, if I can get, I said, what about next month? She says, well, I've applied for unemployment. That should be coming in next month. And when that comes in, we'll be able to take care of it ourselves. Okay, cool. It's just a 1-month deal. Pay their electric bill, which was past due also, so it's not like it's $671 for 1 month. It was a past due amount for a couple of months. But I put that challenge on Nextdoor. We came up with $1,410 in just a couple of days. And my wife and I, Christy and I, took it over to her. She and her husband came outside to the front yard, and I told them, I said, I know you saw on Nextdoor that I put the plea out there for you. And here's the money we've collected for you. There's $1,410 there. And she and her husband both started crying. The husband's just like all of you men, a proud man that was struggling to take care of his family. And a bunch of strangers that have no idea who they are pitched in and helped them get through that.
So you ended up helping 52 families.
52 families.
And you had 400 people from the neighborhood?
When you go on Nextdoor, there's a tab there you can tap, and it'll show the list of people that you've contacted, that you've had communication with. And if I were to tap on mine right now, we could go through for the last 2 years, and there's over 400 people there. And I know most of those have been people that have contacted me to help on Neighbors Helping Neighbors.
Wayne, would you mind if we take a minute and see if anybody has a question for you
Sure.
after hearing that overview?
Sure.
Anybody got a question? You did a good job. Is there a question? Back there, Sully.
So the donations they gave, how did you distribute that?
How do we collect the money?
How did you distribute it?
So-
How do we collect it, or how do we distribute
So
it?
they'd come to your house and give you cash? Or?
Okay, so my wife has a business, and so she has a Square account. You see them use it at stores all the time. They have a Square account, and she has a Square account for her business. So they can make a donation through her Square account, or they can give me cash. For needs like groceries, I encourage people to get a gift card.
Okay.
If you just get a gift card, they can take it to the grocery store and buy what they want, buy what they eat, instead of a bunch of people cleaning out their pantry and taking them food they don't want. So why are they giving it to somebody else? But another thing, if you give them a Visa gift card, that can be used to pay their electric bill. Or if you wanted to help pay somebody's electric bill, all you need is the address. If the lady like the lady that had a $761 electric bill, we started doing, that was one of the first things we did. But as we got into it, if somebody needed help with a utility bill, all I need is their address. And if somebody wanted to help, if you wanted to help somebody pay their utility bill, all you got to do is call the utility company up and say, here, I want to pay $100 toward the utilities on this address, and they'll credit it their account.
Is that how?
So there are other ways to do it. But as far as the cash goes, yes, I would have people just come to my house and bring cash.
What was your other question, Sully?
I was going to say, is that how it kind of progressed to where everyone in the neighborhood kind of said, we know their address, now we're all going to kind of call and put into the bill?
Well,
Did it progress?
everybody could do that.
Oh, okay, but it didn't necessarily.
But I would not have the people, I kept everything anonymous. People wouldn't know who the people are I'm collecting for.
Okay.
I mean, I just don't tell them, you saw this person on next door. Her name is such and such. She lives at this address and she needs help. I wouldn't do any of that. I would just say, there's a need in our community, a single mom. I mean, we helped 3 single moms that had left abusive relationships. And if you're familiar with how that happens, a lady just picks her kid up, grabs some clothes, and they leave everything behind and walk out the door. And we helped 3 young ladies, single moms who had left abusive relationships, get reestablished by furnishing their apartment. And that was all done in just a couple of days. So a lot of great things were done. But yeah, there's ways to do it. And if people brought me money, I mean, if they think I'm going to steal from them, they're not going to bring me the money. If they want to help, we'll find a way to make it happen.
Wayne, this is an odd question, but why do these neighbors scattered around that you don't know, why do they want to help?
I'll tell you, most of you, I would think every one of you probably, want to help somebody if you see the need. If you're convinced that that's a real need right there, you want to find a way to help. And there are a lot of people in the community just like that. And they don't want to send if they've got $200 a month they want to spend on benevolence, they don't want to send that money to the Red Cross, because everybody knows the Red Cross is going to take 95% of that for the Red Cross, and the other 5% is going to be used to help people, but it may be to help people, they may be sending it to Haiti or to Bolivia or to Yugoslavia or somewhere. You don't know where that money is going. But people in the community, if they see a need to help somebody within their own community, they'll jump at that. They'll say, man, it was great to get to see this opportunity to help somebody within our community. And so that people will do that.
You ran into some situations where people thought you were doing a scam, right?
Okay, so yeah, because I'm asking people for donations, one guy went on the next door. When I went on the next door and said, this family needs this, and I'm always very specific about what they need. I'm not just open-ended, say, y'all bring me a bunch of cash. And I'll tell people how much they need for this specific need. So I went on the next door and I did that. And a man came on the next door also, right there on the same thread of text messages. And he says, y'all shouldn't be giving this guy any money. You know he's just ripping you off. He's keeping all this money and not helping anybody. And so I followed him up on next door and I said, look, if you have any doubt, you're welcome to come talk to me personally. But you don't have any right to go on the next door and try to minimize what I'm doing and try to slam me and slander my name when you don't even know me. So you're welcome to come talk to me anytime. And I sent him a private message. And I extended that invitation in private also. You're welcome to come to my house anytime. And just don't even tell me you're coming. Just make it a big surprise. That way I can't plan anything. I can't line people up to be a testimony to you. We'll just do it on the spur of the moment. And we're going to go visit some of the people that we've helped. And I won't even get out of the truck. I'll just take you around. We'll go to a couple of houses. I'll let you get out and go knock on the door and talk to people and just ask them if the neighborhood pitched in through Neighbors Helping Neighbors and helped you. And so I told him the very first family we're going to go visit is right down your block. Because when he posted his message on Nextdoor, I Googled his name and found out he's a general contractor. He lives about a mile and a half from my house. And so I knew his address. And so I found his address. I was, that street sounds familiar. And then I noticed that's the lady that we helped, we're giving her $1,410, lived on his street. So it happened just like I told people starting out. There's probably somebody on your street that needs help. But since we don't talk to our neighbors anymore, you don't even know that. But there's probably somebody on your street, on your block that's struggling. And it was exactly that case with him. And there he was slamming the whole idea when it was a person on his street that we had helped. So I told him the first people we're going to go visit are right down your street. And you can go to the door and you can explain to them why you didn't help them.
Wayne, you didn't do this as evangelism, did you?
No, I just did it I'll tell you, George asked me if there's an opportunity for evangelism here. And yes, of course there is. But people would see that it is a ministry when that desire to help each other comes from the scriptures. It comes from your inner being. It comes from your desire for your burning desire to be a godly person. God uses that desire to drive people, just like when Jesus was talking to that teacher of the law. He says, well, who is my neighbor? Jesus, you know, the man didn't argue with Jesus about it. When Jesus came to the conclusion, the man didn't get up in arms and say, well, I'm not going to say that Samaritan. No, he knew exactly. And how did he learn? It was built in him. He knew what that was. And people know when they're reaching out to help other people. That's a godly trait. I mean, that's what that is. So sure, you can use it as an evangelism tool, but then it becomes more of a church-related thing, not a neighborhood-related thing. And when I say church-related thing, I'm talking about this organization called the Bay Area Church of Christ. But as each individual in the Bay Area Church of Christ does things on their own, look how much broader that makes the Bay Area Church's outreach. The Bay Area Church's outreach is the Bay Area Church has a lot of evangelism going on around the world, and that's great. But we also need to be tuned in to opportunities for evangelism right in your own neighborhood. And just think if you help these people, if you go back to them and say, hey, would you like to come to church with me Sunday? I would be willing to bet that 80% of those people would come to church with me Sunday. So there is the evangelism available there if you want to use it as an evangelism tool.
Jesus said something related to this, I think. Let your light so shine before men that they may see your good works and glorify your Father in heaven. That's good works. People see it, and suddenly they want to glorify God. It's the natural instinct when we see good being done to glorify God.
Okay, well, I wanted to point out something very important about me being here tonight, is that Christy and I have done this, but I'm here to tell you anybody can do it. Anybody can do it. Any one of y'all could go on Nextdoor, set up an account, and start doing this right away. And to tell you, I wanted to tell you, and I don't think I've told George this, but I've tried it here. I've been here since February the 8th. So I've been here 2 months. I went on the Nextdoor. I started getting on the Nextdoor when I got here, the middle of February. I've been monitoring what's going on Nextdoor here in the area, and there was a story on Nextdoor Sunday of last week. Sunday of last week, a lady says, she lives in an apartment complex. So it's not a neighborhood of big houses, and I'd like to mention that too, but I have limited time. But I want to tell you, it'll work here because a Sunday a week ago, a lady posted on Nextdoor, I live in an apartment complex. There's 2 little boys ride their bikes around here all day, every day. They have a blast. I enjoy watching them. I sit out on my patio and watch these kids ride their bicycles and stuff. Those 2 boys had their bicycles stolen Saturday. And she said it's so disappointing that would happen right here in our community, that these two little boys now don't have their bicycles to ride. And mom and dad can't afford new bicycles for them. The mama has quit her job because childcare has gotten so expensive, she wasn't making any profit working, so she's staying home with the kids. That just makes it harder for them to make ends meet, and now they've got these two bicycles stolen. If anybody has a used bicycle that I can purchase for these boys, let me know. She was just looking for somebody to say, here's an old used beat up bicycle, the boys can have it, right? Or she even said, I'll pay you for it. So I contacted her, I sent her a private message, and I said, would you let me try something and see if I can raise the money to buy these boys a new bicycle? And she said, sure. I said, okay. I said, you take your post down, and I'll put a post on Nextdoor tonight, and we'll see what happens. So Monday night, I put a post on Nextdoor. There's two little boys had their bicycles stolen. 8-year-old and 9-year-old little boys got their bicycles stolen. And if you've ever been a child, had something stolen from you, you think, man, what is wrong with people these days, right? And you just get a bad taste in your mouth about people. Why don't we give them something positive to look at from this story? And if you can donate to help buy these boys some new bicycles, let me know and let's see if we can make that happen. Was it Thursday? Wednesday, I posted that on Monday. Wednesday, the lady had $150 and she was donating some herself. So she had the money to go buy these boys bicycles. She bought them bicycles, bicycle helmets, locks for their bicycles, all from people that had donated and what she wanted to pay herself. And it was just so easy. It was so simple just to let the community be involved in helping those little boys get their bicycles back. And then she posted a picture on Thursday of the boys standing there with their bicycles. Posted that picture on Nextdoor. And it was just people like you and me that saw a need and said, yeah, I'd like to donate $20 to that. I'd like to donate $25 to that. And it happened. It just happened so quick. It was 2 days. So anybody can do it. And it'll work right here in this community. Because people said, well, you know, this community, they just don't really want to give and they don't really want to help. And you'd be surprised what your community will pitch in to do. And as a community, you'll achieve some great things. I just want to point out, I know our time's slim, but one thing our community did in Neighbors Helping Neighbors there in Denton, Texas, there was a young man posted on Nextdoor. I hate to admit this, but I'm homeless. My wife and I were both working at a restaurant when the pandemic hit and the restaurant shut down. So we both lost our jobs at the same time. He posted this in June, and they both lost their jobs in April. So he had been unemployed April, May, and into June. For over 2 months, he'd been unemployed. He said, we've lost our house, we've lost our car, we've lost everything we own, we're living on the street. He said, I hate to admit it, but we're panhandling out on the street. When we get enough money from panhandling that we can afford a motel room for a night, we go check into a motel room, we clean ourselves up, and we get back out on the street. And he said, right now, we're struggling to just feed ourselves. If somebody can help me with that, I'd appreciate it. I sent him a private message, and I said, young man, you need more than food. Can I come over and talk to you? And he said, okay. I said, are you in a motel tonight, or are we meeting out on the street somewhere? I'll come pick you up. He said, no, we have a motel room tonight. I said, okay, my wife and I will be there shortly. This was on a Sunday night. Christy and I went over and spent about an hour and a half talking to him. And I asked him, I said, if I can find you a job, are you willing to work? He said, yes, sir, absolutely. So I said, okay, so you need a job. I might be able to help you with that. You need a vehicle. We'll just see what the neighborhood does about that. You obviously need food because that's what you were asking for. That's an easy one. And you need a roof over your head. That's a little more challenging, but we'll see what we can do. Let me just post it on Nextdoor and challenge the community and see what we come up with. So Sunday night, I posted that on Nextdoor. There's a young man and his wife that are on the street. They've lost everything they own because of the pandemic. The young man needs a job. They need a vehicle. If somebody has an inexpensive, a reliable vehicle that we can maybe get to him somehow, let's see what we can do with that. They need food. If you can donate food, let me know. And we need money. We need cash donations so that we can keep a roof over their head. They can stay in a motel until they can get on their feet. That was on Sunday. That same Friday, he started working at a 7-Eleven. On Tuesday, that same week, 2 days after I posted that on Nextdoor, a lady contacted me and said, I think I have a car for this young man. And I said, okay, how much is it? And she says, it's free. And I said, well, does it run? And she said, yes, in perfect running order. And I said, well, how can you give this away? And she said, well, my husband passed away, so I have 2 cars in my driveway. And 2 months ago, my sister passed away, and she had 2 cars. So I'm sitting here in my house, I got 4 cars out in the driveway. I'll give him one of them. So Wednesday, she went and picked him up at the motel, took him to the DMV, signed the title over to him, and paid for his insurance for 6 months. Now, can you believe that? That's just an individual saying, hey, I see a need, and I want to help this young man. Gave him a car. And a person that owns a 7-Eleven gave him a job at his store. We had $2,000-something in cash donations to keep them in the motel. We paid for their motel for 7 weeks. And of course, we got a bunch of food and gift cards to Walmart so they could go buy groceries. So it all happened in 5 days. 5 days. They went from living on the street to having a job, a car, food, and a place to live. It was incredible. So it can happen. There'll be great things happen if you just challenge the community to do it.
You kind of have to do something for God to use to make something happen.
Yeah, the opportunities are there.
Yeah.
The opportunities are there. It just takes somebody. It could be you, me, George, anybody, to be the vessel. To be the vessel. That's all God wants you to do. God says, I'll do the work. You just be the vessel. And anybody can do it. That's the main thing. That's one thing about God that you can learn from this, is that God doesn't ask people to do impossible things that only a few people can do. God asks you to do things that anybody can do. Anybody. And anybody can do this.
Wayne, I want to thank you for being here with us, and I'm so glad you were able to spend a few weeks in the area. And we wish you well on your future journeys. Yep. And hope you will stay in touch with us and let us know how things are going.
Well, I'm planning on being back next February. So when I come back next February, whichever ones of y'all take this and run with it, you can come to me next February and say, man, you wouldn't believe. It was exactly like you said. It worked great. We've helped so many people. And when we leave here, we're going to Brunswick, Georgia. And guess what I'm going to do in Brunswick, Georgia? I'm going to try to do this again there.
I bet. All right. Well, we'll look for you in 2023, February 2023. Thank you, Wayne.
I'll be here.
Hey, I just want to make one announcement in case you hadn't heard. We got good news about Don Webster, and I'm hoping that's holding up. He came through the surgery very well, and that's fantastic, triple bypass surgery. Mm-hmm. So praise the Lord for that answered prayer. Anybody else know of an announcement we ought to make? All right, then let's bow for a word of prayer, and then we'll be done. Father in heaven, thank you for this evening that we could gather together and think about your will for us in this world. And Father, we pray that you would open our hearts and our eyes and help us to obey you. Help us to love you with all of our heart and soul and mind and strength, and help us to love our neighbor as ourselves. But of course, Lord, we know we can't do that perfectly, and that's why we need your grace. And we are so thankful that Jesus went to the cross and made it possible for us to be forgiven. Father, thank you that Wayne and Christy were here tonight. We pray that you would bless them on their journeys, and help them to be fruitful in your kingdom. In Jesus' precious name we pray. Amen. Good night.